We launched live last week into bringing the Believe in Balance course into Substack. So I want to give you a quick update. If you missed that, I'll put the links here. I originally wasn't going to do this post to the end of this week, but something happened today with the patient and then at lunch break that made me really realize how important it is to kind of get this message about fall prevention and screening. So two things quick. Enabling the course live and the payments has allowed me to be able to give immediate feedback into the community. So I want to first say two things on the fundraising side. If you listen to one of the last videos that I did over here on Achieve Balance, I had my marathon training shirt. And I put out there how long I thought it would last before my wife noticed that it was on Buddy. And let me just tell you, it only lasted a few days, and I found my training shirt out on the patio. So you have to tune in for the story on that. But you can see Buddy has a new garb here. And this, in part, is why I wanted to thank you, because in pre-launch of the Balance course, I did a special offer that allowed you to jump into the app, my SmartMovesPT training app, early in exchange for a donation to Homes for Our Troops. So I was able to meet that goal. I raised the money that I wanted to. I was able to make a donation to Homes for Our Troops, got a great shirt. That event was at the Boston Garden, TD Bank North up in Boston a couple of months ago, and pretty nice medal too. And I got to run the whole stadium at Boston Garden, see some of the the cool areas that usually priced out of, let's put it that way, some of the high-end corporate boxes, and see parts of TD Bank. As a Bruins fan, it was pretty cool, and I met some of the alumni too. So thank you for that. But in launching last week, I was also now able to make, with some of the proceeds, I was able to actually make my first donation to Stroke OT, which is a great stroke support organization out of Connecticut. We've had Dr. Carolyn Brown on our show, and with my donation, I was able to actually support a class of, I think it was 10 or 15 individuals, kind of sponsored a group class. So I hope to do more of that, and as I grow the course and hopefully get more folks that come in as subscribers, I'll be able to give back even more. But I thought that was really cool. Head over to the announcement of the launch if you missed it, in module 1 underneath. If you make a payment, you can start accessing the course right away. There's three modules up there in addition to the workshop, which is free. That's the screening module. That's kind of the why. The course is the how-to, but in addition, I'm going to keep building on the course. And here's my point and what had happened at lunch and with the patient that made me realize how important this is. I'm going to be announcing the cardiovascular module, and I'm going to do that in a live event probably next week. But stay tuned for that. Just be a subscriber here on Substack to get more information. But I was working with a patient earlier this week, and her husband kind of stopped me, and I was working in home, and her husband stopped me and just kind of wanted to alert me. He said, I'm not sure what's going on with my wife, but I've noticed she's been a little less stable on her feet over the last couple of days, and out of true concern, he did say it, and his wife heard it, and she kind of was like, hesitantly admitting to say, yeah, something is making me feel a little bit off. And so when looked into it a little more, we went over medications, no change, hadn't been sick, health status was stable. Something stood out when she mentioned that she was having trouble getting in for her eye doctor visit, and that was getting canceled. And she was saying that something about her vision might be at play. But also, I noticed that she had a different pair of shoes on, and immediately um, I wanted to dive deeper into that because the shoes she changed to had a much different foot profile, and they were more of a walking this ergonomic. I'm not going to call any brands out, but had a profile that had a big sort of bump here. And for someone with Parkinson's, and the idea of the shoe was to make it roll easier, push off, maybe give it more cushioning. But for someone with Parkinson's, that little bump can make the difference between stubbing, tripping, and falling or staying on your feet. And I know we had had this conversation months prior about her footwear. She does love different shoes, but she had actually approached me because a lot of her friends were wearing Hokas. And knowing as a Hoka user myself, but knowing it definitely has a higher foot heel counter and everything, you can see here that there is a big difference between a flat Converse and a higher heel lift on a Hoka. But in her case, it all came back to going back to her shoe that had a more familiar, if you would say, a foot pattern underneath, because that bump was enough, just like maybe jumping into a Hoka might be enough to maybe bring her up a little too high or maybe have her stub. I know when I first switched to Hokas, it's a great shoe. I run with them. Um, uh, Probably on my 7th pair right now, but it took me a little while when I was first out running and walking. I found myself scuffing. So it definitely changes your gait mechanics. And in our case, we simply changed that back out to our other shoes. And immediately she noticed the difference. So like while I was there, we made that change, and she's going to address her eyewear and her get an updated prescription. And this reminds me, going back to the flow chart for the course and why I'm doing the course, is that eyesight vision also comes into play. Your meds, your nutrition, footwear is a big part, and then the home safety things around the house that could make you at higher risk of fall. So not only did that happen, but then, I happened to be at lunch break running errands and just ran into the local post office. And as I'm getting ready to pull out, I see a gentleman coming out of the post office, walking with very ataxic, very unstable. And he was kind of in the spot right next to the handicap parking spot, but he was in the spot over, and he was trying to make his way down around his car to the curb cut where there's a little bit of a dip or a cutout where the concrete drops down to the parking lot. And I noticed he immediately, as he started to turn, not only was he shuffling a bit, so I suspect perhaps as a hazard of being a work hazard of being a PT. I'm constantly looking at folks' gaits and trying to figure out what's going on. I couldn't back away because I saw him actually turn and have to reach for the top of the hood of his car to stop himself from falling. And we talk about it in the course when we talk about the fall risk screening. Are you kind of counter surfing or surfing for objects for stability? That immediately puts you at a higher fall risk. But then I immediately, for some reason, just went down to his footwear. I didn't know if he had tripped over the curb at first and lost his balance, but I noticed that he had, for him, a very inappropriate type shoe. He was already challenged with his gait. And I noticed he was wearing a Croc. I've never owned a pair of Crocs, so I'm diving into the family footwear here just for this demo. But if you're not familiar with Crocs, very hard, gummy sole and counter, but there's a lot of room in here for the foot to move around. I immediately noticed as he was turning into the curve, he's practically rolling out on this shoe. It was size too big. Who knows if he even had this thing over the back of his heel, but they do make Crocs that have a solid heel. He happened to have, it seemed like the back was open, and he was almost rolling his ankle. But in his case, where his gait was already challenged, this is absolutely the wrong footwear choice for him. Maybe it was easier for him to get his foot on, and a shoe on, and maybe that's why he had to go to this, because maybe he couldn't bend down again without a formal evaluation. Which again, if I maybe I need to have a little sign in my vehicle with "Are you at fall risk?" or a little QR code for my course that kind of. But I wanted to actually make sure he got in his car safely, which he eventually did. But in his case, definitely footwear was not appropriate, and making little changes like the example I gave with my patient makes all the difference. So sometimes just having keen eyes on, having that knowledge, you have to believe in your balance before you can achieve, as I say in the course. But that's why we do things differently in this course. We're, in addition to the foundation modules of the movement, the 3 modules that are already up there, I'm going to be diving deep into these topics. And this one kind of will set the stage, because whether you have Parkinson's, like the examples I mentioned, you're just aging, you have MS, stroke, there's a need to be able to learn more and be proactive. So again, if you start to believe and improve your confidence, you can achieve, and you can get back on your feet if you haven't fallen. Which brings me to the point of 2 more things. One, I'm going to link 2 studies. One that came across my desk about a fall prevention program. It was a Togo based, which is my Believe in Balance course, uses those same metrics. If you took the workshop, you'll learn about those mobility measures. But they also reported on an Australian study that it reduced fall risk up to 30% in a population of stroke survivors who are already at higher fall risk. So that was really good timing on that one. And then another study that I will link about the importance of including fall training. What happens? Like, we do all this, but ultimately, my patients can fall. You can fall at home. How do you get up? And that's the other part of the course. And building out these modules, we're gonna go through those strategies for getting up. I've already have that session recorded when I did this already in beta, and I'm gonna release that as well as the mobility assessments. So I wanna just, again, came on early. I wanted to thank everyone who has come in and subscribed. Not only do you get the course, but you get all those other care pathways that I've built in. I've done others on back care. I've done others on posture corrections. The care pathway for balance is just another offering that you get as a subscriber over here on Achieve Balance with SmartMovesPT. That's my clinical practice. I work with patients in the home. I have a lot of lessons learned and a lot of lessons to share as a stroke survivor who has originally had balance impairments as well. And final point, why I'm doing all this, because if you remember about a year ago when April, May seems to be my time for my annual physical. I went to my PCP, got a good checkup. Again, you fill out the dreaded forms. And again, I already posted on an update last year about this, but when you talk about a preventative wellness plan, when you get your wellness check now, there's so many things to cover. It's a lot of forms, but again, for the second year in a row, no screening for falls, no screening. And this time I actually asked my PCP. I said, "Look, I filled out a lot of forms. I'm getting a bit older. How do you screen your individuals if they are at fall risk?" Because you ask, there's a lot of SDOH questions about your living environment, your mental health, but there still was no fall risk assessment built into the annual wellness visit, and there was no cutoff for age. He just said we don't do it. We don't have time, and so in other words, you would only go see him after your fall, and that's just not his fault. It's the fault of the way we get reimbursed for care these days, and usually it's after the incident already happened. So even more reason to keep promoting this course and expanding the reach. And again, with your donations or your subscriptions, your support, I'm able to actually get this course and programs into more support organizations and groups that need it the most. So I think that is all for now. I wanted to thank you for watching today, but your feedback too, for those who have jumped into the course, you give me some great feedback, and I'll make the announcement on the live module that I think I'm going to do it live. If I can screen share appropriately, because I have a deck that I want to go through that talks about the cardiovascular component of the physical activity versus exercise, confusion around terms, but really the cardiovascular component to the Believe in Balance module. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching. David with SmartMovesPT. Stay on your feet, stay well, keep moving forward.